Trea and Jasmine came to UNIFY looking for more enrichment. As they got into the material, they discovered God had much more in store for them. Let's listen.
We started this journey, I guess it was in 2012. And when we first started this, I had no idea that we had any issues in our marriage. And, it wasn't until Jasmine came to me and told me that we were having problems that I realized that there really was an issue. We rarely fought. When we did, it really just looked like, we just would go days without speaking to each other, hours, maybe a couple of days without speaking to each other. We never really got into any dramatic fights or anything like that. So, from my perspective, I thought we had a good marriage. I didn't know any different. And it really wasn't until Jasmine brought it to my attention that I realized that we had an issue and that it was something that we needed to work on together.
Yeah, I think that was probably, I don't think I really realized that we had an issue either until one day I just felt very angry. But he's like an awesome guy. We really tried to go to church, raise our family right, do all the right things, but I still felt very angry. And I had a really hard time sorting through why.
What we found is that, because we had issues here or there that we would just sweep under the rug, we never addressed a lot of underlying, kind of issues that we had within our relationship. And it all kind of it reached a kind of a boiling point where, Jasmine couldn't cover it up any longer, right? And we had to address it. And it started manifesting itself in, she mentioned anger as one of the, I guess, side effects that we were seeing from, the weakness in our relationship. But aside from that, she started having some physical issues.
Probably around that time, we'd been married about 12 years, and I started having physical pain on my body. I had, it was kind of unexplained. The doctors just kind of finally said it was fibromyalgia because we couldn't figure out what it was. And so my joints would hurt. I was just always hurting and didn't really know or understand that the body is so connected to our emotions. And so by the grace of God, he sent awesome people into our lives to walk with us is the best way I can say it. It was like so loving of the Lord to do what he did for us. And just people took us in and I think just did life with us and kind of walked us through the process of growing, not only in the Lord, but in our own walk and with each other. So over the years, we kind of started learning to communicate. And so during that time, we were in a study, and part of the study, we heard or read about a couple, and the woman had health issues. Her hair was falling out, and there was things that were similar to things that I was experiencing. And I remember that night, Trey said, "Jazz," he said, you're not hurting anymore. And I remember we were kind of like whispering to each other during class, and I thought, I'm not hurting anymore. And we started having a little mini celebration during the class, because for the first time, it had probably been about 2 or maybe 3 months that I had not felt physical pain, and I had been hurting for a long time. And we realized that something was happening physically in my body in addition to the work that we were doing in our marriage. And that's the first time we realized there's this amazing connection in our, our spirits and our bodies and all those things. And so that was kind of the beginning of us realizing like there's something amazing to this process.
There's fruit in this program.
Yes.
I mean, and we saw it manifest itself in the improvement in her health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a journey. I mean, it's been a journey, right? So going back to 2012, when we first came to the realization that there were strains in our marriage that we needed to address, there was a couple that came alongside of us that was a couple that's key and integral to this ministry that spent some one-on-one time with us. And, we spent some time in kind of counseling sessions just to really start things off. And it really jump-started our journey to healing and to strengthening our relationship. And that's when we got involved in the ministry here with, the studies and the classes. And through that, it It's not just a journey of improving your marriage. I mean, it is a journey of improving yourself and really understanding what it means to love like Christ, understanding what it means to be loved by Christ, and understanding who you are in Christ. And I think for me, it not only have I seen the benefits and the strengthening in our marriage, but also in my walk and also just in my day-to-day life, understanding my own emotions, understanding how to deal with those emotions, and how can I understand my wife's emotions and understand what she's going through if I can't even understand my own emotions? And so this program helped me to be able to do that, right? It helped me, I was raised like a lot of guys, you don't express emotions, you don't acknowledge emotions, but emotions are who we are. I mean, it's how God designed us, right? And it's how God designed our wives. And how can we love our wives as Christ loved the church if we don't understand them? And how can we understand them unless we understand ourselves and our own emotions? And I feel like that's what this program did for me. It opened up my mind to understand that aspect of who he is, who the Holy Spirit is, right? Through understanding those emotions.
Yeah. I think that's one of the beautiful parts for me was seeing him grow in that area. And that spurred me on to grow. And so like, I'm incredibly proud of Trey, and I think that was really neat. We both grew. Like Trey said, he grew on his own, and the Lord worked on me, and I grew on my own. And then so it's like we both grew like closer to Jesus and closer to each other. And it was this incredible growth because we really weren't working on our marriage. We were working on so much more. And the marriage was just, it was fruit, but it's so much more. There's just so much more. And I think that was kind of the theme. Every time we wanted, to not fight or get out of debt or to, do well with the kids, it was about so much more. And I think that's the beauty of it. It was when it really became about Jesus, we just saw so much life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about, Jasmine and some of the health issues that she had that, kind of brought a lot of this to the surface. Around that same time, I was at the peak of, having anxiety, I had a lot of work stress and other things, but, the anxiety and the panic attacks had just started really that year. And, now looking back on that, I mean, I've been healed from all that. Not that I don't occasionally have, stress and things like that, but now I look back on that and I understand kind of the progress that I've made. And I believe that then I didn't understand my emotions. I didn't understand when I was stressed out, when things were going on, that I needed to stop and recognize and name those emotions, recognize what they were, validate those emotions before I tried to move on, right? And now when I start feeling stress or if I start feeling a little bit of anxiety come on, I recognize what it is. And this ministry and this program the marriage part is amazing, but it's so much more than that. And that's one of the areas of fruit, that I recognized just recently, making that connection that a lot of the improvements can be attributed to what I experienced through this ministry.
Yeah. So, and we saw benefits, it was hard. Like it was really hard. It's probably the hardest thing we've ever done as a couple, but the rewards are exponential. As Trey said, he walked through anxiety and found peace. And I've watched that, and I've been physically healed. And then we've seen a lot of fruit in our children. They have asked us questions, and there's so much joy in our house. I think we have seen a good marriage turn into a really joyful marriage. There's so much laughter. I think that's the biggest thing that we have enjoyed. I think we have normal emotions. We go through hard things just like anyone else, but there's just this deep joy. Yeah, that's there. Yeah.
For anyone who's thinking about, doing this program, I would say, do it for yourself, do it for your wife, do it for your children, for your family. Everyone benefits from it. And the magnitude of benefit is just exponential. I mean, you can't measure how much we've benefited from this. I mean, and how much our kids are benefiting and how much their marriage will benefit just by watching our dynamic within the home. And these are not things that are innate. I mean, it's not things that, that I experienced growing up at home. My parents were by no means the epitome of a healthy relationship. So I never had this modeled. And there's a lot of books, there's a lot of material, there's a lot of content out there. And I've looked at some of it in the past. And the challenge that I always had is I'm a practical guy. I want to see, tell me practical steps. What do I need to do? What can I do, to strengthen my relationship with my wife? What does that look like? Because, as I said, I've never seen that modeled in the home. So I have no idea what a healthy marriage looks like, what, a husband is supposed to do according to the Bible, right? And you can read it and you can hear it. You can hear the scripture, you can read the scripture, but until you really understand the scripture here, it's not going to make a difference, right? And I've heard it, I've read it, but it never really resonated here until I invested the time, we as a couple invested the time going through this program, that we really begin to understand, or that I really began to understand what my role is and how I'm supposed to love her and how I'm supposed to accept her. And then recognizing what's going on in my own heart, right? And taking a step back sometimes and saying, okay, I'm a little bit frustrated. I may be upset. I may be angry right now. Let me recognize what's going on there. Why is that going on? And then not coming to my wife with a harsh heart, right? And so addressing myself first and letting her know, this is what's going on. And one of the great benefits for me is, I'm now much more quick to address an issue, right? So something that I've done that upset her, it's, I will say we're all human. So there's still going to be things. And even yesterday we had something that came up where, I said something that hurt her, right? And so what this program has done is it's helped me be able to recognize that, take a step back and address her heart immediately, not let it grow, not let more tension kind of widen that gap between us, but immediately address it. And it's helped with my communication with her and even with my kids. So there's just so much fruit in this program.
I think that really is, it's about the heart. Yeah. I think that's just what Trey said. It's, I think we've both allowed the Lord to change our hearts, and that's changed everything.
When I think about how our marriage has changed since we've gone through this program, I can say there's just so much more light than there was before. And it's not that we didn't have good times before. We did. But I felt like before, when we would have an argument or something would come up, we would get stuck there and it would never get addressed. So even if a few days went by and it seemed like things were better, that argument would rear its ugly head in another week or another 2 weeks or a month or 2 months later. And now I don't feel like we have that. I feel like when something comes up, we're able to address it. And, I feel like we address it fully. And I'm not saying it may never come back up. It may, right? But when it does, I'm prepared and I'm equipped to deal with it and really address her heart and make sure that she feels cared for. And so I think, when I think about where our marriage is at now, I feel like we are much more connected. We are, I think, much more in love than we were before. I mean, I think we've always loved each other for sure, but now I just feel a more deeper connection. And I think it's because I'm able to connect more to her heart than what I was before.
Mm-hmm. I think the same thing. I'm pretty nuts about this guy. Yeah. Yeah. He's done a good job trying to care for my heart in the years during and since. We both grown, how would it be different? I think before it looked just like anybody else's marriage. We looked just like you, we had 3 kids and we went to church every Sunday, and you'd always see us smiling and just trying to do the right thing. And then I think as we went through the years, I have my best friend told me one time after we kind of finished the program, she said, wow, she said, before, you guys did this, you and Trey just seemed fine. Like I wouldn't say you needed to go to any kind of class. She said, but now I can't even explain it. You're different. She's like, there's just something different. And I think it's what Trey was saying. There's just so much more life. And that's the best way I can explain it. Everything is deeper and richer. The laughter is louder. The love is bigger. I think that there's just so much more life is the best way I can explain the difference between before and after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing is with our children, right? When we started this, this was several years ago, our children were quite a bit younger. And so it was before they went through teenage years. And this really equipped me to be able to handle, especially my daughter, and deal with her heart. Because sometimes, with the boys, I can say things that don't affect them the same way that it affects my daughter. But, little things, sometimes even correcting her driving hurts her heart. She thinks that I'm, attacking her character if I say, honey, you're a little too close to the curb. But through this, I've learned how to even address her heart. So it's done amazing things in our marriage and in our family.
For sure. And even as the years went on, only God knows what lays ahead. And I had some difficult times in the couple years after we were done with this, just in my own heart. And I think that if Trey wasn't where he was, I wouldn't have had the support and that I needed in a spouse. And so by the grace of God, he was so much more tender and caring towards my heart. I don't think I could have made it through that season and come out as strong without you. And so I'm so grateful to the Lord for that.
I feel like this program changed me. Not by any means have I arrived. I think it's still kind of a daily journey, and we still face a lot of the same challenges, and we'll continue to face those challenges. I'm much more equipped in my mind with how to deal with it, and I'm even more so equipped in my heart, and I've got a softer heart to be able to understand and appreciate where she's coming from and where she's at in her heart and what emotions she's experiencing.
Yeah, I guess we have softer hearts. Yeah, God did a lot of hard work.
The journey as a whole, I mean, we've talked a lot about the fruit. The journey is challenging. It's not easy. And, I would say to any guy who's thinking about, heading down this path, make sure that you're all in. You definitely need to be invested in this process in order to realize the benefits. But if you do, it's going to be well worth your time, and you'll definitely reap some great benefits. Growing up, my father was an alcoholic. Mom stayed home, when we were younger and took care of us, and she did great. Dad was gone quite a bit. And so what I've always understood as a husband and a father's role is to provide. And Dad did a good job of providing for us. But he wasn't around a lot, and really, the interactions I saw between him and Mom were pretty limited and fighting sometimes, and so I think in my mind, Jasmine and I have always been friends, and I think we've been good friends, but the role of the husband really is kind of that of a provider, is kind of what I've always thought. It never really crossed my mind that I needed to be anything more from an emotional perspective for Jasmine. And so through this process and through this program, that I think is really what's changed the most for me, is understanding the role that I play as a husband in supporting her emotionally, whether it's something that I caused or something else that was brought on by something else going in the world. When I look at my role now as a husband, it is to care for her heart, to understand her emotions as best I can, to empathize and understand that, so that I can appreciate what feelings she's going through and what she's experiencing. And then to the extent I can, to help, bring healing to her heart. And it's not my role necessarily to bring healing to her heart, but if I can just listen and appreciate what she's going through and empathize with her, that makes a huge difference for her. And it's something that I couldn't have done before, nor did I think or ever even consider that it was my role or responsibility as a husband. So I think that that's probably the biggest change that I've understood, at least in my role as a husband, prior to going through the program and where we're at now.
I think for me, I've always thought the wife was a helper, and I grew up pretty traditional in a Christian home. And so I actually read lots of books. I love books. I read like every How to Be a Good Wife book there is. And I was trying to do all of them. It was very, very stressful. So I always tried to cook and clean and be perfect and, look okay and, take care of the kids and keep the plates spinning, I guess, and the balls rolling. And it was just too much. And so when we went through this program, I think I still thought that I was the helper. Like that never changed. And I enjoyed helping him. Like he said, we've always been friends, but I felt a freedom to use my voice. And that's probably the first time I've ever felt permission in a church setting to speak up. Part of it's not my personality. And part of it is I didn't feel like that was okay. Like I wanted so much to please the Lord. And I felt like from everything I have read and probably even been taught, I felt like there was just no place for that in the marriage. But I think going through this program, I realized there is a place to use our voice in a manner that the Lord can work through, and gave me courage and freedom. And I do think it helped. Because like he said, he didn't really know there was a problem. And a lot of that's because I never said anything. And that's not helpful to anybody, even to myself. And there was some growth for me in that area. So I think that's probably been the biggest change for me, is feeling like I can talk to you and that's okay. Like I have permission to share. And that was huge. So now that I feel like I have permission to share, it's so much more like a true friendship. Like it's very two-sided. And I think we have some really good conversations. They're not always easy, but they've been helpful.
Definitely the time, but it was what we did in that time, right? It was the time we spent connecting to each other and really going deep in these discussions and going straight for the heart. Things that, prior to this study, I didn't want to go deep at all. I mean, if something came up,
No.
if there was a quick way of resolving it where we didn't have to talk about it, that was always my go-to. Walk away, go to another room, let's go get ice cream and forget about it. What can I do to make her happy and move on? And through this program, we did spend a lot of time going deep and talking about things that weren't uncomfortable to talk about. But through that discomfort, we learned how to have those discussions. And now it's not as uncomfortable. It's still not amazing when you're in it, right? But the fruit afterward is amazing, where it's like, wow, we talked through that. And now we're both smiling, we're both happy, and we're leaving dinner, with this behind us, right? Moving on. And through each one of these struggles, I feel like the difference now is through each one of these struggles, we get closer, right? It just draws us closer as we work through it. Whereas before we got further apart. And that's where the problem, I think, was with our marriage, is we never took the time to grapple and, really dig in and understand what's going on in our hearts and talk through things at a deeper level. And as a result of that, it just widened that kind of chasm. And so for me, I think, really it's the time, but it's the intentionality of investing that time in really going deeper and sorting through some of these things and going deeper at a heart level.
Yeah, totally. Someone once told me that the more uncomfortable we let ourselves get, the more we'll grow. And that's basically what we have done. And
both individually and together corporately and our marriage. So.
It's been life-changing. We're producing some major muscle, but it is so hard. It's been good though. Yeah.
So I think one of the probably biggest changes that I've seen in Jasmine since we've gone through this study is just her freedom, right? So I didn't realize how the strains in our relationship had really dampened her ability to be expressive as she is. And now I feel like she's filled with so much more joy. And I think a lot of it is just because she's able to express herself more fully than what she could before. And I think that, well, I know that through this program, it's broken down barriers in her mind in terms of what is acceptable as a Christian woman, as a wife, what is her role. And that has transformed who she is and how she thinks about things. And I feel like now she's much more vocal, in a good way, though. I mean, it's she has much more joy and she's just freer.
I think Trey is more tender, but I see Jesus in him. I think that's been awesome.
This process is not easy. And I think the most challenging part is honestly addressing what you know you need to address as a husband, but don't want to because it's not easy. And I think that has really been was the most challenging part. And even now, it's still something that, that can be a challenge, but now I understand how to deal with it. I would say, to any guy that's going through this, you really have to make a decision in your mind that this is what you want, that you want the benefits of a awesome marriage and the benefits that come along with having a joyful, happy family, and know that there's going to be a lot of challenges along the way. It's not going to be easy and you're going to have to fight through it. But if you do, the rewards are just so abundant. It is amazing. And it's going to definitely be worth your time.
The hardest part for me was the pain. It was so painful. I don't think I felt pain like that ever. I thought I was hurting, but when we started working through issues, it was like, it had become so easy to put the guards up and pretend or continue on with our wonderful Christian walk, or so I thought. And when we actually tried to do some of the things we were learning, it was so painful that there was times that sometimes having the guard across your heart was easier than going through the process with him and having the conversations and really facing dark things. I often wanted to stop. And so I think sometimes I was just as much grappling with the process as he was, because it is difficult to deal with hard things. And it is easy to throw up our heart armor and protect ourselves. And what if he doesn't follow through? What if we start this thing and I put my heart on the line and it doesn't work out? There's no guarantee. And I think for women, we want certainty. We want stability and security. And when we were going through the process, there was many times where I didn't know, I was like, I don't think about this is going to work. He's not making as much progress as I hoped that he would. I'm not doing as well as I thought I would. And so that's the hard part. The hard part is not knowing. And I think that's where sort of our faith comes into play, where we trust God, that no matter what, he's got our heart. And that's where I had to learn. And as much as it hurts, I learned that God is the ultimate protector of our heart as he goes through this process. And it's been difficult, but it's been worth it. And I've learned to drop the armor and kind of be uncomfortable. And the pain has been hard, but it was good because I'm on the other side and it's gone. Like, I needed to go through it, I guess, for it to go away. I don't know how else to say it, but that was the hardest part, is how much the process hurt.
Yeah, I think what was hard for me too going through this program was the timeline, right? So, I think that as guys, we want to be able to address the problem and move on. And when you've spent 10, 15, 20 years in a marriage not addressing anything, you're going to have to address all of that, right? And through this program, we did that. And I think the most difficult part was really understanding that the healing and the resolution of the years of issues wasn't going to happen on my timeline, right? It's not fully in my control. I can tell you there's things I can do for sure, and that I have to do as a husband to really bring healing to her heart. But I have to accept the fact that it may take weeks, months, years, possibly even decades for some people to see complete healing in your wife. And you just have to be patient with the process. And a lot of us guys, we ain't patient. We want to see immediate results, and there will be results for sure. But you have to accept that it's going to take time to really bring that complete healing and fullness back to your marriage. The benefits from going through this process are just amazing. I mean, I can't even begin to talk about how things have transformed, right? And, what the fruits have been. But first and foremost is just a strong connection with Jasmine, something that before we got along well, we were good friends, but now I just feel a deeper connection with her that we didn't have before, a connection at a heart level that just wasn't there. To me, that's one of the greatest benefits that we've had here going through the program. But beyond that, really understanding and recognizing who I am, recognizing my own emotions and understanding how to deal with my own emotions has just really had resounding benefits in my life, in my work life, in my interactions with kids. As guys, we don't really understand emotions. We don't talk a lot about emotions growing up and things like that. And so we miss out on so much in life. And now having that, I'm able to understand other people better. I'm able to empathize with other people, that are going through situations, understanding and recognizing their emotions. So the benefits are just amazing and abundant within our marriage and in our family. But even beyond that, personally and in the workplace and in the world, it's hard to describe really, all the benefits, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the benefits. There's so many, like Trey said, but it's been a lot of freedom for me. I think it's challenged me so much. It's pushed me towards the Lord, and He's taken me in my own process of finding freedom. And as we've gone through this, and so I think there's just so much more freedom in my heart, so much connection to Trey, and so much life. And we are really about the kingdom. And so it's well beyond Trey and I. Like, we have grown, our kids have benefited, but it's really about Jesus and about making Him famous. And we had a cool story happen a few weeks ago, and I'm part of a sports organization, and we had gone to a social event just briefly, and the lady that interacted with us that evening, just here and there, we were playing cornhole and axe throwing and just having fun. I saw her that week, and she said, you and your husband, it was so nice to see you guys. And she said, if I'm not married, but if I ever get married, I want what you have, or I never want that at all. And so it really surprised me. And I didn't realize that the world looks on, they look at our lives. And in that moment, I was just so excited that I don't know what she saw, except I hope it's Jesus. So I ran home and I told Trey, and I was excited about that.
Yeah. As Christians, I know we spend a lot of time witnessing to people, right? And I think one of the greatest witnesses is really how we live our lives, right? And especially in our homes with our children. I think everyone would want their children to have a good, healthy marriage relationship when they grow up. And it starts now, right, guys? So the kids are watching you. They watch everything that we do, right? And they do a lot of things that we do. And getting this right at this point, at an early point in their lives, or really at any point in their lives, begins to model and show them what a healthy marriage looks like. So if you don't do this for yourself, which I hope you do, if you don't do this for your marriage, which I hope you do this for your children, because they're watching you and your wife, and they're watching that interaction, and you got to get it right.
It's my best friend saying that before this, she thought we were just fine. She's like, I thought you guys were just fine, just like the next couple. And she said, but now it was like 3 years later. She said, you guys are so different. I don't know what it is, but you guys are so different. And so neither one of us could put our finger on what the difference was, but she was excited and I was excited, but I could feel what it was. I know that it was just so much connection between us.
I think we're pretty private for the most part.
Yeah.
We didn't show a whole lot before.
Yeah. We're pretty flies in the wall type of people.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to stand out, it's not us.
No one would know we were fighting.
No
It's not like
one
we were
would know.
screaming fights
Yeah.
and stuff before.
And I think that's actually, I hope that would apply to a lot of people, because I think that a lot of people are. We're not standing out. There's no red flags. We think of programs like this when there's some glaring problem. And I think that was what was really cool for Trea and I, is that there wasn't a glaring problem. I mean, everyone that knew us probably thought we had a stellar marriage. But I think going back to the phrase in our hearts, there's so much more. Someone told us that when we first started. They said, there's so much more. There's so much more. And they just kept saying that. And I don't think I really understood what that meant. And then now that time has passed and we've watched the Lord work and we have really put in some hard work, there's so much more.
Yeah, that's what I love about this program. So you could be newlywed and still giddy in love to a couple that's about to divorce. And I feel like no matter where you're at on this spectrum of your relationship, this program can help make your marriage better, right? And I think that's what's great about this is, we were somewhere on that spectrum, and a lot of people wouldn't look at us and say, oh, they need, any type of marriage counseling or marriage study, but we benefited so much from it. And so, I think regardless of where you're at, there's always opportunity to improve. That's why self-help books, fly off the shelf when there's a new one that gets published. In the same kind of way, there's always opportunity to strengthen your relationship with your wife, to go deeper there, and then to really invest time in yourself, making you become who you want you to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of reminds me of that verse that says God does exceedingly abundantly beyond all that we can ask or think or imagine. And that is what there's so much more is all about.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really resonated with me in this program is seeing the leadership and how they interacted as a couple. I didn't have that growing up. I didn't know what a healthy marriage looked like. I didn't know what it looked like to walk through a struggle in a healthy kind of way without pushing and shoving and shouting. And seeing that time and time again in the leadership couples really made a difference for me. And I think what was even more amazing is they were very open and transparent, and just knowing that they've been on this journey for years, and knowing that they still have challenges that they have to work through, and seeing them work through it really was very helpful, because you can read books, you can hear sermons, and all that stuff's great. But for me, I have to see it in practice. And I got that through this program, being able to see another couple, an experienced couple. I mean, I'm, a mere novice. I don't know what I'm doing here, but this couple, they know what they're doing. They still have challenges. They work through it. They get through it. And I get to see how they got through it. And as they talk us through that journey, and then I take that back. And then when I'm in that same situation and I've screwed up, I mean, just completely screwed up, I know that there's hope, because I know the leader of my group, he completely screwed up too, but he got it right. And how did he get it right? He walked through it. He deeply connected with his wife. He talked through her emotions. He listened to her, didn't try to immediately fix it, but he listened to her heart, and he really sought to bring healing to her heart as best he could. And seeing that, understanding it, watching it play out, that really resonated with me. And I'm able to then take that and put that into practice. And I'm also able to see guys that are very successful screw up. They screw up pretty bad. So I'm not a complete screw up myself whenever I mess up. And, I can get this back on the right track here. And so it's really encouraging, I think, just how, not just down to earth, but really how vulnerable the leadership is, and vulnerable just so I can understand. So I can understand in my heart, and so I can learn from that process. He's vulnerable and puts himself out there for my benefit. And so I think, for me, this program was amazing in that way.
This is a miracle. Those tears are like, I never saw those ever. And so that alone is the testimony that God works in men's hearts. For me, there's like two things. I love that the leadership, while we were in part of this program, just like Trea said, like, let us be real. They were just very real. They modeled things. So it was very practical, like how you could walk through real life scenarios that they were facing themselves. And that was helpful for us. It's helpful for anyone to see things. And then they let us be real. I remember one time in particular, I'll always remember this, and I didn't do anything I was supposed to do. And I don't know if they would remember, but I remembered I didn't do my homework. I didn't want to come to class. I wasn't in a good mood. And I remember they asked me during that time, Jasmine, blah, 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 blah. How are you doing? Blah, blah. And I just told truth. It was part of my journey of learning to express myself. And their response, I'll just never forget it. They were so gracious. I had this permission to just be where I was in that moment. And I don't think I felt like that was ever okay to not be okay. And I think that was probably one of the first times in my whole life that I've ever had anyone in a Christian's role in my life give me permission to not be okay. That was like life-changing. And so it wasn't like anything great was happening. Actually, everything horrible was happening. But it did something in my heart. It kind of gave me a view of the Lord. I don't think I understood that he was like that. And so God actually used that moment, which probably was bad for everybody else. But I learned something in that moment. I thought, oh my gosh, why didn't they yell at me? Why didn't they make me do my homework? And I realized I didn't have to. And there was some freedom in that I've grown in that area. I've talked to the Lord about that. And all the years still, it changed, I think, some of the direction where my faith was. And so that was really special in a very non-special moment. And the other thing was there was this couple, and seeing the other couples, I cannot say how amazing it was to be in a group setting. When we first started, we were individual, like one-on-one with a couple, and that was awesome. But they told us that it would be helpful to be with others. And I guess, as is everything in life, it was great to be with others. And seeing the other couples was helpful. It was hard. It was ugly. It was messy. It was beautiful. It was all these things. And there was another couple. I will always remember them because I was a little scared of the wife. And she just seemed everything I did not want to be. And I just remember watching them for like a couple years. Every time they'd come to class, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I wonder what's going to happen today. And at the end of our time in that class, I remember I was so moved, and she transformed into this beautiful person. And it was amazing to watch the Lord work in her heart. And it was amazing to watch the Lord work in my heart. And I remember the last time I ever saw her, she came over and she hugged me and she said just the kindest things to me. And I remember I was so proud of her and she was so proud of me. And I realized we were probably both watching each other for 2 years. And so there was like the Lord was using everything, the other couples, the leaders, each other, everything. It just kind of came together like this symphony of grace in our lives. All the pieces of the orchestra kind of playing their part to create this beautiful song that's still being written. If you are considering UNIFY, it's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but the rewards are exponential. And I can't say enough about the good and the growth and the grace and just so much life that you will get out of the amount of work that you put into it and the amount of work you allow the Lord to work in your heart through the process. But I would strongly encourage anyone that just wants to grow to consider it.
If you want life in your marriage, and if you want to live in abundance in your marriage, don't think twice. Go join UNIFY. I would say the benefits and the rewards that I've experienced in my own life, in our marriage, in our family, have just been so amazing. I mean, the fruit's there, guys. So don't think twice about it. Just go in, know it's going to be tough, but set your mind to it because you want the benefits and you want the rewards that this brings. And if you really want it, go sign up. I mean, I would encourage anybody that asks me, should I do it? From someone who's gone through the program, who's really invested time, I would do it over and again, 1,000,000 times over. It's been well worth it. And I know that you'll be pleased with the results.